Lynn McNeil. I'm the Vice President of Fabric, and I'm with CMC Microsystems. And I'd also like to thank everyone for joining us here today for this very exciting time where we're about to launch and go through our round 2 challenge call for IoT product development. So this presentation is intended to provide you with a brief overview of Fabric, but we'll be spending most of our time talking about the round 2 challenge call, how to apply for the call, an overview of the requirements and the eligibility criteria for the round 2 and the selection process. I'll also talk to you a little bit about how to apply for Fabric membership, and also about Accelerated, our conference in November, that was our symposium, in September, that we're really excited to share with you as well. And then we'll be finished with Q&A. Okay, so Fabric is a 5-year, $223 million project to stimulate and expand the semiconductor ecosystem in Canada. It's funded by ISED through the Strategic Innovation Fund, and it has up to $120 million in total funding over the 5 years, and it's being led by CMC Microsystems. The program is really in response to the major shifts that we've seen in the semiconductor landscape over the past few years, including pushes by government to regain their national positions for semiconductor development and in fabrication. And you'll see that in things like the US CHIPS Act and the European CHIPS Act. So there are and continue to be big opportunities for Canada to participate here as these landscapes change. And Fabric is really strategically focused on key areas of technology where Canada already has existing strengths and global recognition. So these include areas of product design and development, photonics, micro electromechanical systems or MEMS, compound semiconductors, and quantum computing and quantum semiconductor technologies. Fabric will provide the tools for Canada to be a major global player in these key strategic areas. And it has 3 specific program components: the challenge calls, which we'll focus on mostly today, the innovation platform, and the ecosystem development portion. So through the product development challenge calls, which we're doing today, we're accelerating the development of novel made in Canada semiconductor and IoT products for the global market. Through the fabrication challenge calls, which we'll be doing in the next month, we're stimulating the development of new fabrication process capabilities and capacity for prototyping and manufacturing semiconductors right here in Canada. We're also about to formally introduce and launch Canada's first quantum sandbox, which provides industry and academics with access to quantum computing infrastructure and support for prototyping of novel quantum algorithms. And this will really help to ensure that Canada is ready to adopt quantum computing as the technology matures. And finally, Fabric offers webinars and events to grow the ecosystem and provide opportunities for collaboration and partnership development with our strategic end sectors as well. And again, Accelerated in November is an example of that. So why CMC? So CMC has been around for over 40 years now, and our mission is to accelerate industrial innovation and enable research and excellence across Canada. And for over 40 years, we've successfully managed federal and provincial government investments to introduce advanced technology, to support research, and to stimulate the Canadian tech landscape. CMC has provided affordable access to semiconductor fabrication services and design resources for a number of years. We service over 10,000 students a year annually in training. We manage a large suite of state-of-the-art CAD tools for design, things like including Synopsys, Siemens, Cadence. These are all full industrial strength CAD tools. And we also have an extensive supply chain with more than 100 CAD and fabrication suppliers globally, and that includes 50 in Canada. So these would include companies like Global Foundries, AMF, and C2MI, and more. And CMC's network includes over 10,000 academic participants and 1,000 companies across Canada. So we've been around and we've been doing this for quite some time. So we're going to talk about the challenges and the strategic objectives. So there's a number of different strategic objectives that Fabric has, and the product development challenge calls are aligned with several of these very important strategic objectives. The calls are intended, first of all, to foster the growth and expansion of companies that are developing and commercializing advanced sensors and other semiconductor products in Canada that are targeted specifically at the IoT market and focused on very important end sectors, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, that are strategically important to Canada. We're also looking to create long-term benefit to Canada through the creation of Canadian intellectual property and the commercialization of this intellectual property as well. And finally, we're working to enhance the national security and the resiliency of our supply chain for semiconductors in Canada. We saw this huge level of disruption during the pandemic, and so we're trying to increase our sovereignty and resiliency. And that is really by getting more Canadian organizations participating in and developing products and services for the supply chain globally. So now I'm going to focus on this challenge call. The first challenge call that we issued was in September of 2024, and it was just 2 months after the official launch of the Fabric program. And it was a general open call for both product and fabrication development. And we did this to really develop awareness and generate interest across Canada because it was a very new program and not many people had heard about Fabric. And we were actually quite surprised to receive 138 expressions of interest, representing over $235 million in project value, which of course was more than our entire 5-year budget for the program. So we were quite thrilled with that. Based on this, in this and in all future calls that we have, we will be much more focused on specific themes. In the product development calls, we're going to be looking to stimulate products that service strategic end sectors that are very important to Canada. So these sectors are shown here on this map, include things like biotech, agritech, healthcare, natural resources, including mining, oil and gas, digital, for instance, including 5 and 6G products, and much more. And we were very happy to see that in the round 1 proposals, they covered almost all of these different end sectors. So we know that there's both skills and appetite to develop products that will service these end sectors. In this particular call, we will be focusing on 2 specific areas. In digital technologies, we'll be focusing on edge AI, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And we're also going to be looking at a specific end sector of ocean and marine IoT related products. So those are the 2 specific themes that we're focusing on for this challenge. In terms of funding, this call will provide successful applicants with up to $1 million in non-repayable, so this is non-dilutive funding, to reimburse up to 37% of your eligible project expenses. And details for eligible project expenses can be found on the website, and I'll be pointing to that in a few minutes. We will consider exceptional funding for up to $1.5 million, again, not exceeding 37% of expenses. Please contact us prior to submission for details of that, and we'll let you know whether or not we would consider that as an exceptional funding opportunity. Reimbursements are paid quarterly, so this is a reimbursement program. It's not a grant up front, and they are based on actual expenses that have been both incurred and paid, so you actually have to provide evidence that you've paid for the various expenses. So it's not just accrual basis. And in this call, we are not including capital expenditures. Again, the call is focused in 2 areas with specific themes: edge AI in digital technologies and ocean and marine IoT and related products. The applications for the expressions of interest opened on October the 6th. They were announced. The website has been open since October the 6th, and we will close on October the 27th, 2025 at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So if you haven't already done so, please refer to the Fabric website for the challenge guide and any other important information about the call. Okay, I'm now going to talk just a little bit about why we've chosen these 2 themes. Again, we have a Fabric Advisory Committee that helps us to develop the themes. And again, these are a panel of experts from across Canada. And we've chosen edge AI because we know that the semiconductor market is expected to grow to $1 trillion by 2030. And much of that growth is in fact being driven by AI. Now, Canada has already made a number of strategic investments in AI R&D over the last number of years, and it's recognized as a global leader in the field. Now it's time that we need to ensure that we are able to successfully benefit from these past investments by commercializing AI-related products and services. So that's where we're focused on. And in particular, edge AI devices, we know, are critical components that enable overall advancement, security, scalability, and adoption of AI. Edge sensors provide the data that we need to feed AI and edge AI models. Edge computing moves the computing power out of the data center and closer to the source, the actual sensors themselves. And AI connectivity provides the networking infrastructure to connect the sensors, the computing power, and the actionable devices all together. So that would include both within the data center, but also on the edge. So the key benefits that we know for AI, edge AI, include real-time decision-making, reduced latency, reduced use of bandwidth, lower power consumption, and we know this is a critical problem right now, scalability, enhanced privacy and security as we're closer to the actual data sources and we don't have to transmit secure or sensitive data over large distances and potentially different networks that could be hacked. And also we have more reliability in remote and underserviced areas where there may not be good connectivity. Right now, Canada has a generational opportunity to participate in this global market. Application sectors range everywhere from automotive to healthcare, manufacturing, smart cities, smart homes, agritech, ocean and marine, natural resources, and many, many more. So this is an area of high importance to us where Canada has strengths, and we will continue to stimulate those areas. Okay, so I'm now going to talk about ocean and marine. This might be new for some people. With the longest coastline in the world and access to the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Arctic oceans, of course, Canada's ocean and marine sectors are critical to both our economy and our environment, but also to our culture and our sovereignty. Canada's ocean supercluster charts the course to grow Canada's ocean economy by 5 times to $220 billion by 2035. And the development and adoption of advanced technologies and AI are a major part of their platform. So they're looking for help here. Key areas of opportunity for the Canadian semiconductor ecosystem include shipping and navigation, precision aquaculture and fisheries, climate and ocean science, offshore energy and energy harvesting, national defense and security, and more. And examples of where sensors and other IoT products and chips could actually be deployed include things like smart buoys, smart feeding systems, autonomous underwater vehicles, sonar and imaging systems, collision avoidance, vessel tracking, chemical environmental monitoring, seabed mapping, and many more as well. So again, a lot of opportunities for us here. I would encourage you to look at the Oceans Supercluster website for more information on Ambition 2035 and to learn more about these opportunities. So here we are looking specifically for proposals that will develop and commercialize novel sensors and other chips for ocean and marine IoT applications. In terms of applications, who can apply? The challenges are open to organizations that are incorporated or registered in Canada and have significant operations in Canada. And this includes for-profit organizations. So this is SMEs with less than 500 full-time equivalent employees. It also includes not-for-profit organizations, post-secondary institutions in Canada, and also research institutes that are associated with these post-secondary institutions. And of course, Indigenous organizations in Canada as well. Applicants have to be a Fabric member in order to submit their expression of interest, and I'll talk about membership a little bit later. If there are co-leads, at least one of the leads or co-leads must be a SME. Okay, so somebody less than 500 employees and a for-profit organization. Also, all organizations must have a minimum of 3 employees, so it can't just be a single person. We want to make sure that there's enough employees there in order to actually execute these projects successfully. And only organizations can apply to challenges, have to be registered. Individuals are not eligible to apply. And of course, you all must comply with the Canadian regulations and legislation. And details of that are given in the guide. I lost my... So I'm going to just spend a little bit of time here. It might seem odd, but I'd like to clarify the role of the leads, the co-leads, and collaborators, because they all have different roles to play in a project. And this was a source of confusion, actually, in the first round of challenges that we ran. So I just want to spend a little bit of time on this. So first of all, the lead is the organization, obviously, that is leading the project proposal. So you'll be the one that's typing things in and leading the actual proposal as you're moving forward. The lead is also seeking direct funding from Fabric, so you're going to put in a funding request to have a certain portion of your project funded, and you will be the main point of contact with the Fabric team. You will also be required to sign a Fabric project agreement, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. However, most importantly, the lead is responsible for the overall reporting, aggregated reporting from co-leads, if you have co-leads, and the management of the project, all the claim submission, etc. Co-leads are also seeking direct funding from Fabric, and of course, they are part of a core project team. They are responsible for reporting and claim submission to the lead so that the lead can aggregate that information up. And of course, this is all for their portion of the project. They will also sign the Fabric project agreement along with the lead, so you are a signatory on the agreement. And in this round of challenges, we will allow up to 3 co-leads to participate on a project with a lead. So up to 4 different collaborators, 4 different people leading or co-leading a project. Okay, so collaborators are not signatories on a project agreement, and they are not directly seeking funding from Fabric. So examples of collaborators would include things like key stakeholders that have vested interest in the success of the project, supply partners that are critical for you, subcontractors that you're working with, academics or researchers that may be contributing, VCs, lead customers. All of these are considered and may be collaborators. They may be making in-kind contributions, and they may actually be included as part of the work plan. And it's really important that you identify collaborators, as well as if you have leads and co-lead, or if you have a co-lead, to identify those in your expression of interest. So start thinking about your collaborators, but more importantly, start thinking about your structure. Is there a subcontractor that could be a co-lead that might want direct funding through the program, or is that potential subcontractor somebody who's more of a collaborator that's part of your supply chain? And we can help to answer questions about that moving forward if you have any more questions about that. I'd also like to highlight that Fabric supports or Fabric provides support for recipients. So if you're successful with your project, you can apply for support for prototyping the products that you're developing in the project. So this includes access to CMC's fabrication and packaging services, the ones that we already discussed earlier, aggregated multi-project wafers for affordable prototyping, and that's done through cost sharing. And we can go into that in more detail. Just send an email and we can describe that in more detail. You can also have access to custom runs if needed. Again, CMC has got access to fabrication foundries in leading fabs in Canada and globally. So almost all the technologies that you would need would be covered through this support. We also provide support services by CMC. This could include things like final design rule checking if needed, chip finishing for multi-project wafers. So we'll stitch everything together in order to aggregate all of the designs that are coming in. We manage all the IP and security of that IP as well, and also managing logistics and interfacing with fabs. The recipient only pays for the direct materials of their portion of the wafers or chips from the foundry, plus any direct shipping or brokerage fees. These are considered to be eligible project expenses, and because of that, they can be applied for and reimbursed based on your project sharing ratio. So for example, if a run costs $100,000 and your project sharing ratio is a full 37%, then when you put in these incurred costs into your claim, Fabric will reimburse $37,000 of that cost. There will be no additional fees or markups for CMC services. These costs are completely covered by Fabric. So again, this provides affordable access for prototyping. The project selection process is a 6-step process. And again, details for this process are provided in the challenge guide. I would encourage you to download that and read it. We are currently in step 2. The deadline for submission for the EOIs, again, is Monday, October the 27th at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That will be followed by the EOI screening process, which will be completed, and we expect that all applicants will be notified about the outcome of their expression of interest no later than November the 27th. At that point, successful applicants will be invited to submit their full proposal for submission in December, and final project proposal review and approval will be completed in February. The The EOI screening will ensure that the expressions of interest are complete and that all of the requirements have been met before you'll be invited to submit a full project proposal. On the scope side, we are looking for hard tech here. So this includes the design and development of novel chip-based product or MEMS, photonic, or quantum-based sensor. Okay, so we're not just looking for IP to be created here. It actually has to be a physical, tangible chip that's being designed or developed. The applications, as again, we've already talked about, have to target these two themes: edge computing, sensing, or AI connectivity, which is under Edge AI, and of course, ocean and marine IoT. Under the eligibility and strategic alignment, there needs to be a very clear path in your expression of interest to commercialization, evidence of market demand. There needs to be alignment with the strategic objectives that we've discussed earlier. It would be great if you can leverage Canadian fabrication capabilities where possible. We know that that isn't always possible, but there are a number of different fabs here in Canada: CPFC, Teledyne MEMS, and C2MI, and many, many more. And again, we can help you to identify those fab partners. And the product must be at a technology readiness level of 7 or more by the end of the project. So this is TRL 7 prototype at planned operational level and is ready for demonstration in an operational environment. Activities, of course, include prototype field testing. So that's TRL 7 at the end of the project. The estimated project costs have to exceed $200,000. We don't have an upper limit on that, but the funding will be capped at 37% of the eligible expenses and no more than $1 million, again, except in exceptional circumstances. And the reason for that is because we don't want to have a whole number of small projects running simultaneously. It puts a huge administrative burden on it, and in some people's view, it actually spreads the peanut butter too thin, so to speak. The project duration is expected to be somewhere between 12 and 24 months. However, all projects have to end no later than December 31st, 2027. You do need to demonstrate that you have the sufficient resources in order to carry out the project to conclusion, but you also have to demonstrate a need for funding. And of course, the projects have to be incremental to regular business, not already be approved or in progress. And you have to show evidence that they wouldn't have been undertaken at the same scope or scale without the support of Fabric. All project work does have to be performed in Canada. However, up to 10% of the work can be performed outside of Canada, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I also want to highlight here that there has to be benefits to Canada, and those benefits are about HQP retention and about job creation and training opportunities. We're also looking again for the development of IP, specifically for commercialization in Canada, and there are rules about that. And of course, we're looking for social and economic impacts as well, including the advancement of the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If your expression of interest is brought forward to a full proposal, and you successfully submit that full proposal, then we will go through what we call the formal selection process, project selection process. And again, this is being done by external assessors. The proposals will be assessed according to the project selection criteria. And again, these are highlighted for you in the guide. But in general, there are 3 different categories for these criteria. It includes the commercial opportunities and outcomes. So this would include, again, things like the market opportunity. It also includes things like letters of support from your customers, investors, advisors. So if you're thinking about doing a project, I would advise you to actually start trying to get together with your customers and other people that can provide these letters of support in advance. We'll also be looking at your return on investment, your business case, the commercialization plan, and other things that are associated with commercial opportunities. On the advancement of the Canadian semiconductor ecosystem and benefits to Canada, of course, we'll be looking for IP commercialization, impact on security and sovereignty in Canada, job creation, training and collaboration, and others. And on the project execution, budget, and likelihood of success, this would include things like identifying a clear work plan, clear milestones, and KPIs. We'll be looking at the strength of your team and the sources of and the need for funding in your budget. We'll be looking for a more detailed risk management plan and risk mitigation, and of course, engagement with key partners and other aspects as well. So again, each of these criteria will normally have equal weighting when they go for the final assessment. That could be adjusted by the FAC with our Fabric Advisory Committee, but it will generally be equally weighted. And the proposals will be evaluated, and if any one of these areas is found to be excessively weak, then we would the project would be unsuccessful in moving forward. So not only do you have to score strongly in all three of these areas, if one in particular is weak, then your application can be rejected. Okay, and I also would like to spend a little bit of time now just talking about what actually is required of you if you do go forward and you are selected to complete a Fabric project. So first of all, successful applicants must sign a project or ultimate recipient agreement for the project with CMC. And this will include all the terms and conditions, the funding amount, as well as all the obligations of the recipients. And this agreement must be signed within 60 days of you receiving your letter of award. Project activities also have to begin within 60 days of signing the agreement, which means the team has to be ready to go. The location of the work has to be performed in Canada unless pre-approved in writing. Again, a maximum of 10% of the work can occur outside of Canada, but this has to be very specifically described in your application and agreed to and approved in your actual agreement. Eligible expenses must comply with the eligible project expenses guide, and again, that's available for download on the website. And we do have funding stacking limits. So this is actually something that's a real benefit in Canada. Industry partners participants can stack up to 75% of their eligible supported costs. So that means you can get, if you got 37% from Fabric, you can also use stacking from SHRED for the scientific tax credits in Canada, from other sources of municipal, provincial, and government funding, for instance, IRAP, NSERC, and other sources, even other SIF funding as well. And all of those can be stacked up to 75% of eligible supported costs. So in reality, a UR only needs to contribute up to 25% or more of the actual expenses. So this is a really good news story. Post-secondary participants, of course, because they may not have other sources of revenue from their operations, are eligible to stack up to 100% of their funds from government sources. Intellectual property is an important part of any of the SIF networks agreements and in funding in general in Canada. And it's required in this particular program that ownership of all foreground IP has to remain in Canada and be used for the benefit of Canada through commercialization for a minimum of 5 years after the completion of the project. There are reporting requirements. These include quarterly reporting of activities, submission of financial claims must also happen quarterly, as well as the provision of all of the supporting documents. There will be monthly project check-ins in most cases with your project advisors, and additional reporting may be required, including things like semi-annual reporting of KPIs and annual reports that might be generated. Of course, it's also important that all recipients must comply with Canadian economic and trade sanctions. Okay, so that's all the requirements. That's all the grunt work of the program. I'm now going to just talk a little bit about how you can actually apply for funding. Again, I would encourage you to go immediately to the Fabric Innovation website. The QR code is here. You can scan that. It's also at fabricinnovation.ca under product challenges, And then I would ask that we have implemented a change for the submission of EOIs if you've applied in the previous call. We have now implemented a new Fabric Challenges portal, and that's hosted by a company called Blackbaud. You will need to go and create an account on the new Fabric Challenges portal. It's very straightforward. You'll also need to apply for Fabric membership if you don't already have a membership, and it may take up to 2 to 5 business days. If you don't have a Fabric membership, you will still have access to the portal once you've created your Blackbaud account. But if you do submit that, a submission for an EOI, and you do not have your Fabric membership, your EOI will not be assessed. So please don't wait to the end to do this. I would encourage you to do it right now if you haven't already done so, and we'll talk about how to apply in just a minute. We've also provided a template EOI for you to work on the development of your EOI in advance. And it's just a template. It's in Word format. I know myself when I'm applying for grants and things like that, I'd like to do that so I can get my thoughts together. However, the complete expression of interest has to be entered and submitted using the portal fields. So you'll have to copy and paste or type in whatever you want to do, but you have to type directly in to the portal fields. We won't be accepting a Word version of the document. And you will be able to provide some supporting documents as well. And again, the details are in the challenge guide. If you do have any questions, I would encourage you to contact us at challenges@fabricinnovation.ca. Myself and the Fabric team and the project advisors are here to help you really to develop your best EOI possible. It's in everyone's best interest that we get really solid and meaningful expressions of interest in these challenge calls. And again, I would encourage you to check out the website for details at fabricinnovation.ca. So just a little bit about Fabric membership. The good news is Fabric membership is free. It's free for Canadian industries, not-for-profit organizations, and government agencies. It is the membership is at the organizational level, and then you can become a member of that organization through Fabric. So it's the organization that actually registers. And through the membership, you have access to a number of different services and resources. You are able to get all of the challenge calls, access to the portals and things like that. We have an IP repository and an IP registry that you will have access to. And there are other really important resources and collaborative opportunities. And again, these are all free. And also member pricing includes discounts for training and reskilling courses that we offer, discounts on events, including Accelerated, our symposium. And of course, you also get access to the Quantum Sandbox, which I spoke about earlier. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about Accelerated. We're very, very excited to be hosting Accelerated, the Canadian Semiconductor Symposium in Vancouver this year on November 25th and 26th. It's a great opportunity to come out to meet with thought leaders and hear from them in the ecosystem as well as in our strategic end sectors. So this year we're going to be having people there from ocean, from mining, and from a couple of different end sectors to talk to us. And there'll be lots of opportunity for networking and discussing potential collaborations and partnerships. So again, I would encourage you to check out the website. I also wanted to let you know that we will be offering tech tours of facilities in the Vancouver area on the Monday before the symposium. So we're really excited about that. And also we will be offering training sessions for business leaders for the decision-making around photonics and quantum technologies on Thursday immediately after the symposium. So again, please check out our website for more information and registration. So at that point, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Again, my name is Lynn McNeil. Please connect with me directly, either at my email address or through LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with people. And I'd also like to thank all of our founding partners for making Fabric possible.